Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 9 or day 10 with an asterisk of the BB27 Companion. Of course, it's an asterisk as if you listened to episode 9 or saw me on social medias at Pace and Nathan, you would know my laptop malfunctioned and it's in repairs, and so I'm using a spare. But that took a couple days to set up, so I'm trying to work through the backlog, which is why this is coming out tonight. And then ideally, day 11 will come out tomorrow morning. Day 12 will come out in the midday. Day 13 will come out late in that day, and then my review will come out the next day. But we'll see what I have the mental energy for. But that being said, today for day 10, this is after veto. Jimmy has to decide who he's putting up, and his choice is baffling. And that's where we are in sort of the frame of what's going on. But obviously, I'm going to use hindsight from what we know now, right? So Jimmy decides to target Amy, which is baffling for a number of reasons. One, he had a target he was already looking at, and Adrian as a backup. Two, he was already planning on renomming Riley, but is now not doing that. It's like he's forgotten that premise. And three, Jimmy has had this great opportunity to say a lot of people are safe, and now he has to target someone who he had been promising safety to in some capacity, right? Because he had promised so many people safety, which is fine, but now he has to break it. And so he's obsessed sort of with this idea of I'm having to break these promises. He's obsessed with saying, well, if I have to nominate somebody who I don't have breaking trust with, I need to get them out because I'm breaking trust with them. And so he's kind of forgetting this Adrian piece. And what's confusing me here is Jimmy was in a great spot. He had an alliance. He had in his HOH a lot of people in his room vibing with him, feeling safe with him. He was promising them safety, and it felt genuine. He had a house target that was a consensus that he was making everybody's game better because he was targeting this person. And lots of people were ready to work with him. You know, he had an alliance that was kind of weak and not really existent that was really starting to solidify very quickly around Jimmy because of Jimmy. And then Jimmy loses his sight chance at Keanu, and his game starts fracturing very quickly. You know, he had a backup and target in Adrian, which would have been fine. Zach probably would have fought a bit, but Zach was also on the out-night vote before, and so you had the tools you needed to get out someone like Adrian. Adrian is a great target for Jimmy because he's not in any of like Jimmy's sort of alliances, but Adrian is a real player. Adrian has a lot of comp potential. He's someone that's great to get out. Instead, you're on the flip side, where Jimmy is obsessed with the fact that he has to nominate people he's promised safety to, and so he decides to target Amy, who he has no business targeting. Early guest the day before, he had been talking with Rachel about potentially being in a final 3 with Amy and her, because saying like, oh, when I'm at the final 3 with you and Amy, obviously you would take Amy, like that's like I see your game, but in a way that's like him accepting that this is a real possibility, right? At least the vibe from the conversation, right? Could be wrong on this, but that's okay. So he's in this position where he's looking at Amy, he's working with Amy, and now he has to nominate somebody. He's like, well, who's easy to put up? And Amy's been on the block before. Why don't I do Amy? And the problem with this is, like Vince before him, he goes to the easy route. So now we have 2 HOHs in a row where people are trying to find easy options to be replacements, right? For Vince, that option was Kelly, which was stupid for him. And for Jimmy, that option becomes Amy, which is also stupid for him. And the difference is, because we're now on day 11, people have a sense of where things fall. Jimmy, by nominating Amy, is sort of saying, oh, no, that's not where things fall. And a lot of people are very quickly losing their trust in Jimmy because this decision doesn't make sense to his allies if the way they view the house is true. And also, they all put a lot of work into making sure Amy was safe last week. Why are you making them do it all over again? And so you have pieces that were solidifying because of Jimmy being HOH, and an alliance sort of solidifying, now fracturing a lot. People are looking to target Jimmy who were not looking at it before. And now you have people forming new sort of cores, new alliances, or emphasizing new cores, the bond and that kind of stuff, right? And because these new cores are forming, they're not being built around the center of power. And one of the questions I have is, why is it the case? And I think the Blockbuster has a lot to do with it. It's not necessarily the who could stay part of the Blockbuster, but the three nominees part, right? There's a lot of discussion before the season about, or especially before 26, about how three nominees make things a lot more complicated. And the argument was always for minority alliances, right? Because minority alliances have to nominate more people, it is harder to get out their target. Here's the catch, though. I think it also makes it a lot harder for big alliances in early weeks to form because they have to spend so much more time nominating people and talking about it and breaking trust that they're less focused on the idea of cementing power and taking out a target and more focused on appeasement. You know, three targets creates an incentive to do that because you're like, oh, I have to get so much blood on my hands. But I think a lot of players don't understand that counterintuitively, actually, that three nominees isn't actually that much blood, especially if you have a target, if you have an emphasis. Even like people who on the blog were frustrated will be like, okay, well, I need to hope that Jimmy's not HOH in the future, but I'm not. It's not Jimmy's necessarily his fault as much. He just had to nominate people. There's easy ways out of this that someone like Jimmy can use, but instead, that's not what's happening. The Blockbuster, because of the three nominees, means that you have more room to navigate in terms of who you nom because you have more excuses to be like, look, I want it. Look, you can still be safe. You have more room to say, well, I'm making sure you have you have two competitions available to you if I'm nominating you, right? There's a lot more room there. But these players obsess over, I have to nominate so many people, that they're more willing to find the easy out rather than the best opportunity. It's why Jimmy spends his time being like, well, I think I need to put Amy up first and then Will second if Kelly goes off, which makes no sense for Jimmy, who definitely benefits a lot more for Will. But because he's so obsessed over this idea that he has to break promises, he is more committed to breaking the biggest promises in a sense that in being like, I got to target hard for this person hard. And of course, this breaks trust. And I think it makes the game in some ways more interesting because power is harder to solidify. The players are counterintuitively having a harder time because of counterintuitive incentives to cement power. And so in a sense, I think the Big Brother Blockbuster makes big alliances harder. You know, in 26, big alliances really never formed. You got to like alliances of 5, but they never got past 5. Like even in every season before, you had alliances of 6+, 7+. Here you have 5, and that's about the most it's been able to form. I think the bond is 5 or 6. But it's not very real, you know. The bond is more real. Specifically because Ava's emphasizing it a lot and really focusing on it in a way that says, well, if Ava believes it, then it's more real than these other things where I can't tell what people believe, right? But when you have these sort of smaller alliances that are the biggest that can form, it means you're more focused on relationships and more dynamically able to move around a lot more than when you have these bigger structures. I think in some ways it's harder for players to follow, like viewers to follow, because you're not going to have the same level of big structure gameplay where a big alliance forms and then they're having proxy battles throughout the beginning of the season. And at some point, people on the outs or on the in, some of the people on the bottom of the in will fall out and work with people at the bottom. Or someone who's on the bottom, not in the alliance, will win HOH and can target someone in the middle, which then splits everything open. Instead, people are having a hard time building power because they focus so much on who they're nominating. I think Veto Twist add to this because when you add more nominations, you're going to have more problems. You know, Jimmy's like, I need to flush all the powers, which is great. But you have to have a plan for when all these powers get flushed that you'll be okay. Or you have to have a plan so that you'll be okay. And Jimmy doesn't really have this plan, and I think it's really hurting him. That's all I have to talk about today for day 10. If you like the video... Okay, I'll say this. If you like the video, you should like it. If you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe. I'm trying to reach goals for myself, and these sorts of things help a lot. But that being said, don't stress. Have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow, which definitely won't be, for what is day 11 with an asterisk. Bye.